I'm on my thesis.
How long have you been on this?
This is my 5th year.
So it's not like you'll be a deputy minister. Is that the case?
Honorable Chair, I'm just about concluding my thesis, and so it is expected that all other things being equal, that within the shortest possible time, I should be able to.
I know sometimes it takes long, but 6 years on, we still find that in your CV. Now, that leads me to the next page of your CV, Chair. Member of Parliament, January 20, just watch to the right, January 2017 to date, July 2011 to date. Now, the January, were you a member of the Appointments Committee as at 5th January 2021? Thank you, Chair. On to where you have leadership experience.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. My membership of the 8th Parliament ties in with a tenure constitutionally mandated.
All right, thank you. Is it Professor Kwame Bafuata of Chairman's or Commonwealth Hall? Is that the Professor Bafu? Is he at the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission?
That's correct.
You cite him for purposes of your reference. The government praises and hails itself free senior high school. Investment in human capital and investment in literacy and numeracy. Where is Ghana on that? What's your appreciation of the progress or challenges we have made as a country in pursuit of that noble objective? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The government over the past 5 years has made very significant investment into education and recognizes that when the population is highly educated and possesses the requisite skill, it will be on a path to economic transformation. And therefore, the requisite investment ought to be put into education. We have seen that policy progressing. I am always very enthused when investment into free SHS is mentioned, because I recall some decades back my plight in the village Asinkrua. At the time, no electricity, no telecommunication access, completing and struggling through SHS. I wasn't the only brilliant student from my village, but I was the only person who could make it through to SHS. And today, many of my colleagues may not be on this seat to meaningfully and significantly contribute to nation building. Today, the narrative is not so because many students from all over the country would have access to second cycle education.
You share the view that quality have been compromised for quantity?
Honorable Chair, I do not agree to that assertion.
Why?
Considering all the reports available, the annual performance reports of the education sector, also the WIEC reports that we have seen, and comparative studies that are available indicates that education outcomes are improving. For the past 5 years, steadily are improving. Quality is not compromised. Recently, when the 2020 WIEC report was announced, out of 465 students in West Africa who scored A1 in all 8 subjects, 88% of them, 411 to be precise, were Ghana Free SHS graduates. For the first time, over 50% of our students from Ghana who sat the WASI passed all core subjects. And all the figures are there for the various years to compare, and it's a very huge gain for the country. It is a narrative that the country must be so proud of, and for which I do not think that quality has been compromised.
All right, thank you very much. Back to your CV again. I believe page 2, Member of Parliament, January 7, 2017 to January 7, 2021. Is it January 7th? Just for guidance.
7th.
And you have chosen, yes, to January 7th, 2021. You said so in your
It's January 6th, please, Honorable Chair.
Okay, so indulge chairman and then do what is appropriate.
Very much so.
You have chosen to define key responsibilities of Parliament. You see, you are under oath, so you have given this CV under oath. representation of constituents in parliament and lawmaking. Is that all you do as MP in your CV? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. For the purposes of brevity, I kept it so.
Technical and vocational education, in my view, enhances employability. You would be assisting the Minister for Education in reaching out to the training of our young people. What is your take on elevating technical and vocational education? Thank you, Chair.
Technical and vocational education form very critical part in the economic transformation of every nation. It is upon this backdrop that His Excellency Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo has strategically envisioned that by the end of 2030, even the science to humanity ratio will have to be improved and transformed from the current 35 to 65 to 60 science, technology, engineering, and then 40 humanities. And so we have on record many investments that have been put into TVET transformation. The recent bill that was passed, Pre-Tertiary Education Act, also goes to give credence to the priority being set to transform that sector.
Thank you, Chairman. Name any free senior high school in your constituency and share with us what their challenges have been.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The free SHS, the high schools in my constituency are St. Manso Secondary School, where I attended, Yankomasia Hinkro Secondary School, Adankoman Secondary School, and Insuta Secondary School are all running very well. As and when a challenge comes to my attention, we'll promptly respond.
You are not aware of any challenges? They have not brought anything to your knowledge, to the best of your knowledge? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'm in constant engagement with all the stakeholders running these secondary schools in my constituency, and as and when any such challenge comes to my attention, I would promptly respond.
Do they have challenges?
None that has come to my attention.
Thank you. As the free core subjects textbooks are given, are you aware what the status of elective subjects textbooks are?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. At the same time when the 4 core subjects textbooks were supplied, elective textbooks were also supplied. Core subjects were given to students. Core subjects were given to students, and elective textbooks kept in the library for reference.
So do students enjoy free elective textbooks?
Precisely so, Honorable Chair.
Elective textbooks are given for free to students of the free senior high school program.
That is so, and as I indicated, the core subjects are given to the student for their keeps for the period that they are in that particular level, whereas the electives are kept in the libraries for their reference.
Why are the electives not given to the students, and what will you do about it if you get approved to the ministry? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I shall interrogate why that is so, and at the appropriate time, when approved, give a response. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, Honorable Susu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Reverend Fordjour, congratulations once more.
Thank you.
My very, very first question has to do with abandoned school projects and what your take will be on that and what you will do to assist your minister to complete those school projects. When you come to my constituency, for example, post-COVID arrangements are such that the total numbers in the classrooms are supposed to be managed and controlled. But we have a number of school projects which are halfway through but have not been completed. Some have been there for more than 10 years. And yet we are struggling for space for these children to study in a very good atmosphere. What would you do to remedy this situation?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Government, you agree, is a continuum, and so it is important that every project that is begun by one government is continued. It is for this reason that President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo has time and time again emphasized his commitment to complete every project started in any regime that is still at various stages of completion, in addition to new projects that he's undertaking and investing into. There's a comprehensive report here from FPMU detailing the statuses of every project and the status. At the appropriate time, we may have the time to share the details. But the commitment I'm giving you is that all my briefing indicates that all the projects that were started at various stages of completion are being pursued and investment put into it. As a matter of fact, some are completed. Just singling out E-blocks, for instance, 129 at the time of 2016 were completed. This president has pursued and continued, and indeed, as we speak, 39 of them have been completed, the rest at various stages of completion.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Again, what is the policy direction of your government to end the menace of schools under tree? I am asking this question on the background of a news item published by Ghana Web on the 1st of June 2020, where Ofosu Bato MA Basic School pupils study under trees. I know that this is not limited to Ofosu Bato MA Basic School. We understand that with all the gains government would be making with free SHS, we would need the foundation to be strong in order to build on that foundation with a free SHS. What is government direction as far as removing schools under trees at the basic level concerned?
Thank you. Policy directions are certainly not within the domain of a deputy minister, but from my briefing obtained and my interactions with the Honorable Minister, what I have gathered is his commitment to ensure that schools under trees receive interventions and they are eliminated. I'm aware of a VACO trust intervention to commit to eliminating schools under trees. I'm aware of BACDIA funding that is also committed to that. But even beyond that, my minister is always interrogating, the Honorable Dr. Yawse Duchum is interrogating how we came to this point where why should there be schools under trees. A lot of studies have gone in, some review that there are some needs in certain communities, but because the planning of the educational needs are not coordinated and integrated, as community and stakeholders, well-intentioned, may begin a school and teachers may be sent there, and then infrastructure will have to follow. So now he's going to take a pragmatic approach whereby the educational infrastructure planning will be done, and so schools will have to be built where the need is established and the school, the building commissioned and operationalized even before the school starting. So whilst funding is targeting it, this direction would also help solve it going forward.
Now, my very last question borders on the free SHS. Recently, when we were on recess and we were touring I was touring my constituency. I came by young men who were in this JAMA group doing a JAMA and by themselves. Free education, no classroom. Free education, no classroom. Oh, in Medina. Oh, this happened at Danfa in Medina. No. So, well, that's just by the way. Now, my question is that, on hindsight, because deputy minister is a policy-making position. Oh yes, definitely, you are part of policy-making. Before a policy is introduced, there are three key things that we should be looking for: funding, personnel, infrastructure. Do you think that, on hindsight, this policy could have been implemented differently as it's been implemented now?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I must state the commitment of this government the past few years in investing heavily into infrastructure expansion at the SHS level. Per the reports available to me indicates that out of 1,135 projects that were initiated between 2017 and 2020, 508 584 of them have been completed and being used at the various SHS level. That is significantly expanding access. Now, the issue of access is very crucial. Between 2014 and 2016, the enrollment at the SHS level was about 800,000 people. Now, the narrative for the same period, 2017, 2020, is 1.2 million, meaning 400,000 people without the implementation of free SHS would have truncated the education at the JHS level, just as I used my experience as an example at the outset of my submission. Many of these 400,000 people, if you consider the reports from 2013, 2014, 2015, there were averagely 100,000 children who were not able to proceed, transition from JHS to SHS. The problem was access. There were a lot of barriers. This policy is justified. It is a very important intervention, a game changer. It is not to any particular political party's credit. It is a real need that had been solved for the country, for which I believe that all stakeholders and all political parties will continue on that consensus for its sustenance.
Yes, Honorable Yabama.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Congratulations, Reverend.
Thank you.
I'll take you to the Constitution under, I think, Chapter 6, on the Directive Principles of State Policy, and shoot straight to the educational objectives, cultural and religious objectives of the country. Recently, we've had issues with some schools on some religious issues, some with regards to the wearing of hijab, some with wearing of Rasta hairdo or whatever, Rastafarian issues, boards of schools, and a whole lot of challenges that I think has to be resolved well for us to continue to enjoy the cohesion within society and amongst religious bodies and the institutions. What is your take on this?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Just as the respected Member of Parliament and member of this committee has made allusion to the Article 35, the Directive Principle of State Policy, specifically relating to that, Article 35(5) enjoins the country to be integrated and promotes non-discrimination on the basis and any such biases or backgrounds. The Constitution enjoins us to live together. My faith in the book of Psalm 133 states that how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. And so in philosophically and jurisprudence, my understanding of the Constitution is not so much of Ghana as a secular state, but as a plural one, where multiplicity of faith exists, and we are one people expected to live together in that beauty. Considering the matters and the recent emergence and trends that the Honourable Member has made allusion to, in response, same, the Honourable Minister for Education, Honourable Yao Ose Educhum, has made very good strides, engaging all stakeholders in education sphere, the religious stakeholders, the mission schools, the Christian Council, the Muslim Council, the Islamic Council, the Muslim Caucus, and every religious organization that runs mission school, to reach a certain consensus for a very broad guidelines and policy on some of these things to be addressed. And I have had the opportunity to observe some of these interactions. It is going creditably, and we would want to pursue that part. And when given the nod, I will support the minister to ensure that a comprehensive policy is reached to address these concerns.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend. School sports, school sporting activities. amongst our schools produce the best sporting talents the country has ever had. But there's nothing to write home about. And I think it's an area that your ministry must look at. How do you intend assisting your minister to promote this activity?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. This is a very tenable observation, which I very much believe, knowing the Honorable Dr. Yawase Educhum, we would welcome that call to take a look at that and give the necessary support to improve that particular sector. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Gaga.
Honorable Fordjour, congratulations.
Thank you.
I am sure by now you have been briefed about the decision of the Education Ministry to engage the National Food Buffer Stock Company to, as it were, supply food to the various senior high schools across the length and breadth of our country, following the implementation of the free senior high school policy. If you are, I'd just like to draw your attention to the modus operandi of the National Food Buffer Stock Company relative to food supply to the various schools. Now, what they do essentially is to contract contractors or suppliers who then, in the name of the buffer stock company, supply the schools with the foodstuffs. Now, this is done without recourse to, one, the procurement plans of the various schools, including their entity tender committees, which is actually provided for in law. Now, if you're giving the nod, Honorable Fordjour, how would you deal with this situation?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. My minister has engaged recently suppliers supplying to SHS through National Food Buffer Stock to receive the assurances, to understand their challenges, and to ensure that there is continual supply of food, and food is made available to our daughters and sons in the SHS to be able to have the sound mind to study. As to the modalities of the procurement is an issue that can be discussed, and any such discussion is welcome.
Anyway, thank you very much. There is also this issue, and sorry, Honorable Fordjour, you are also very familiar with the Professor Avoke, former VC of Winneba University of Education, Winneba. Now, Professor Avoke was removed from office on an allegation of malfeasance. He was subsequently vindicated, and yet he remains, or he hasn't been was in his favor. What is your opinion, regarding this situation? Within the context of social justice.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
You were involved.
The Honorable Member is a lawyer and would agree that given the complexity of his question and need to be well briefed and vested with the facts, the judicial pronouncement, and how this whole matter has transpired to date. Upon that, I will be able to give.
And you gave an assurance that the President has given indication that all abandoned projects would be completed. But Honorable Fordjour, if you're giving the nod to serve as Deputy Minister for Education, I would want you to have at the back of your mind the fact that some of the projects which were initiated by the GET Fund have stalled for well over 4 years. 4 years. We have 6 classroom blocks that were started under the Get Fund project, and I can mention a lot. In my constituency, if you go to a suburb of Uwiaga called Palensa, there's a school there, 6 classroom. There is another one at Kadema, 6 classroom. After 2016, the contractors have never returned to site, Honorable. So beyond the rhetoric, yes, we would fix all abandoned projects. What would you do to ensure that these abandoned projects see the day of light? I mean, to help deal with the problems we have had with schools operating under trees.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think I've earlier on addressed the matter to do with schools and the trees, and in specific response to the respected honorable members' inquiry, Palensa and Gadema schools will receive, I can assure when I'm giving the nod, will receive immediate attention to interrogate what has accounted for that and the necessary remedial action given. Thank you.
Honorable, I take you for your word and I'll follow up when you are approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm done.
Yes, Honorable Agafa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ntim. I believe I was in your situation many years ago, sitting where you were sitting as a Deputy Minister nominee. At the beginning of this year, I raised the issue of the financing of tertiary education in the context of COVID alleviation. But if you look at Article 25 of our Constitution, it says clearly that higher education shall be made equally accessible to all on the basis of capacity by every appropriate means, and in particular by progressive introduction of free education. So our Constitution envisages education should be free. Do you foresee during your tenure that you will be able to do anything to reduce the cost of tertiary education in our country?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. That commitment will certainly be beyond the remit of my mandate. I wish I could have given that assurance, but that is certainly not within the remit of my mandate. But what I do recall is when a similar question was posed to the Honorable Dr. Yao Ose Educhum, the concern, he acknowledged the concern, the need, and assured that he would engage with the SLT's Student Loan Trust Fund to fashion out how some expansion can be explored to mitigate the plight at the tertiary level. So that much can be pursued, and that much I can tell. Thank you.
The student unions have made a strong case that COVID, in spite of all the problems that it brought on us, also exposed to the setup where tertiary education can be delivered online, and many of them tend to receive tertiary education online. And the person-to-person contact has been reduced. And therefore, in their opinion, cost has also been reduced in terms of the deliverer, that is the university. But then it has been increased in terms of the students having to buy bandwidth and etc. to receive the delivery. But then also it has been reduced to them in terms of accommodation. They don't need to go to school to live there to receive tertiary education. In the light of this development, don't you think that we should be engaging the tertiary universities, especially the public ones, to get them to reduce their fees?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. COVID-19 has occasioned the world over the need to look into innovative ways of administering learning, and so a lot of ICT interventions will have to be explored. And at the moment, I can speak to the interventions that the Honorable Dr. Yaose Educhum is championing, where SENDLOS is being retooled and empowered to be able to address these emerging challenges to ensure that ICT is deployed adequately, particularly at the tertiary level, to ensure that even the President's target of expanding or increasing gross tertiary enrollment ratio from the current 18.8 to 40% by 2030 is done. So there are a lot of engagements that are already ongoing, but specifically to calling for tertiary institutions to reduce their fees, I do not think there's sufficient facts and information available for me to make a decision on that. Thank you.
You have taken time to look at the facts and the information, and you don't think that there's a need to reduce the cost of, the fees that students pay in tertiary institutions. Is that what you're saying?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I believe my good friend and respected colleague very much acknowledges his even personal principles of taking decisions that are data-backed sufficiently. And at the moment in my seat, I'm not vested with that information to be able to take a decision on this request. Thank you.
All public universities are required to present annual reports to the minister, which must be forwarded to Parliament. If you look at the Act establishing the tertiary universities, have you looked at those annual reports, especially the income and expenditure, how much money comes to the universities, to have a sense of whether or not there could be a basis for action for reduction of fees from students?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I still maintain my earlier submission.
Which of them? That you've not looked at the reports? Or?
That I am not sufficiently vested with the relevant data to be able to make a decision on your inquiry.
And so the point I'm making is that that data is supposed to be in the annual reports of the universities. Have you looked at those reports?
I haven't.
Okay, will you ensure that those reports come routinely and as required by law to this Parliament so that we can have a closer look at what is happening in the tertiary universities, tertiary institutions, the public tertiary institutions?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Those documents, as per the constitutional procedures, do go through, and Parliament, as an institution, would have them as and when the procedures are applied. And so that should not be a challenge. Parliament assessing it or any stakeholder assessing it, these are matters of public record. And so some decision can be taken when engagement is done and the figures looked at, the report sufficiently analyzed, then we can know the way forward on that.
Chairman, I believe I've exhausted my...
Thank you very much. Yes, Honorable Zare.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good afternoon and congratulations, Honorable Reverend Fordjour.
Thank you.
My first question takes us back to some earlier questions that were posed. And I want to share with you some data regarding schools under trees. Presently in Ghana, we have 2,417 schools operating under trees. Of this number, 167 are primary schools, 989 are junior high schools, and 261 are kindergartens. When we fast forward to the senior high school, the issue of whether we are running a double track, triple track, gold track, what are the other tracks? Platinum, silver, all structure. At the end of the day, it's the lack of infrastructure that is making us introduce and implement these tracks that some of us still are grappling to understand. What does it tell us as a nation? That the issue of infrastructure in the educational sector remains a Herculean task, that government has to begin to take pragmatic steps to resolve the issues of infrastructure. The Honorable Agalga alluded to some abandoned school projects that were started by the previous government of this country, the NDC government. I have one sitting in the Salaga North constituency. I share borders with them at Kwalbi since the elections of 2016. No contact, and yet we are grappling with infrastructure. What would you do, together with your sector minister, to ensure that at least this issue of infrastructure is eliminated once and for all, that students can go to school at whatever level in this country and study in comfort as a human rights issue? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Honorable Chair. It's interesting the interest of the honorable, respected honorable member in adding more minerals to the tracks already existing, platinum, silver. These are not tracks existing in the. But on a more serious note, to the tenable concerns raised, it is for the purposes of expanding infrastructure across the various levels of education, which 2007 infrastructure were commenced between 2017 and now, and 933 of them have been completed. The rest under various stages of completion. I have earlier given a submission to the effects of President Akufo-Addo's commitment to ensure that every infrastructure that is begun, regardless the regime or irrespective of the regime that started it, is continued. A comprehensive debate about projects at various stages of completion as to who started it will bring about many revelations, because there are many projects that were started by various regimes and are still at various stages of completion, many of which have received intervention and completed, and others also. So the debate is going forward. Now, if free SHS had not come on the challenge of infrastructure, one of the barriers, the 400,000 children would have been home, truncated. So the school of thought that until we have sufficient infrastructure, 400,000 of a productive population should be sacrificed on the basis that there is not adequate infrastructure now, then it triggers some form of alternatives. Okay, so if the number of infrastructure available, the total capacity available, if we have to use same to serve 1.2 million students, what will be the tenable way out? What are the best practices out there that have been deployed, even in targeting such challenges as and when they arose in other jurisdictions? And then we learn from them. Then double track, as complex that when it's explained, it seems, is something that is very important and is something that cannot be done away with at this point in time, unless a decision is taken on consensus at the national level that 400 to 500,000 students will have to be sacrificed on the altar of infrastructure constraints. And the question will be, whose child will have to be dropped out? Whose child is to continue? So we must appreciate the investment put in so far. Considering the steady investment year on year into infrastructure, the target that President Akufo-Addo set at the outset of free SHS, that between 5 to 7 years, double track system will be eliminated, is on course. And if we are to go this way, that will be eliminated. Just yesterday, my minister, the Honorable Dr. Yause Educhum, gave a firm assurance to the media that between 2 to 3 years, that tracking system will be eliminated. But at the moment, it is serving a good purpose. And that is what we must acknowledge. On the issue of schools under trees, I have given the submission again, and I will still be humble enough to reiterate that VACO Trust Fund, BAGDIA, and some other funding interventions have been committed to address that. And my minister...
Honourable Member, I think her simple question is being avoided. There are schools, projects that were started that have halted. She wants your assurance that they will be worked on. That's all. Is that not right?
Thank you, Honourable Chair. And that assurance will be given again, that any project that is at any stage of completion, irrespective of which regime started it, is receiving attention and will be pursued to completion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Honorable nominee, when you look at the Constitution again, Article 34, the directive principle of state policy, contained in this chapter shall guide all citizens, emphasis mine, all citizens. The cabinet, political parties, and other bodies and persons in applying or interpreting this constitution or any other law and in taking and implementing any policy decisions for the establishment of a just and free society. 35 clause 5 of the same constitution says, the state shall actively promote the integration of the peoples of Ghana and prohibit discrimination and prejudice on the grounds of place of origin, circumstances of birth, ethnic origin, gender or religion, creed or other beliefs. In the recent past, we've had issues about religion dominating the discussion in this country. Schools have taken certain actions based on certain people, students' religious beliefs. Indeed, we had a revered man of God in this country make some statements to the effect that because one religion is in the majority, their way of worship should supersede everyone else's interest and worship and other religious rights in this country. On the heel of that came the Achimota School Rastafarian issue. As a Reverend Father yourself, what will be your personal opinion on the ruling of the Achimota School saga and the president of the Methodist Church who made those statements about religion and how, because one religion is more than the other, things should be done in a certain way in this country without reference to this constitution that is supposed to guide how we all live and operate within the sovereign entity of Ghana. The last thing I want to add is, how did we get here? Most of us went to mixed schools, we went to schools, we had different religions, but we managed to hold the sanctity of this country. Why are we talking about Ghana and religion at this time? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I would relish the opportunity to re-emphasize some of the submissions I've earlier given, that I am a Reverend Minister, a proud Christian, and my faith tells me in the book of Psalm 133 that how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity, and even likens it to the oil that flows on the head of the priest Aaron to the garment. Now, I would want to say in perspective that Ghana is a nation for every citizen that lives in, and with regards to multiplicity of faith and recognition of same, we have lived together and continue to coexist in mutual respect. And I think that everyone has played their role to contribute to this cohesion. And so I would humbly appeal that every stakeholder exercise restraint to ensure that the considerable contributions that everyone has made is not undermined, and that our cohesion as a nation is fostered ahead. Regarding my comment to do with the judicial pronouncement, I would refer that opinion to Article 12 of the Constitution, and with indulgence of the chairman, refer that the fundamental human rights and freedoms enshrined in this chapter shall be respected and upheld by the executive, the legislature, and judiciary, and all other organs of government and its agencies, and where applicable to them, by all natural and legal persons in Ghana, and shall be enforceable by the court as provided for in this constitution. So my comment is, a judicial pronouncement has been made on a matter, and the stakeholders involved are respecting the decision of the court. And as we speak, the two gentlemen are in school. Thank you.
Chairman, just Psalm 133. You didn't say verse 1, you didn't say verse 2, you are reverend. You just said Psalm 133. Where are we? We are following you closely.
Just go to the first verse.
Only verse. Okay, 1331. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My final question is, Mr. Nominee, Student Loan Trust Fund, what are the modalities for applying for the loan? Why are we having this situation where students are admitted into tertiary institutions and they are struggling to pay the first year fees, get enrolled on the Student Loan Trust Fund? What can we do to ease this burden on students so that once they get their admissions into tertiary institutions, they must be able to use that admission letter to start processing their loans before school begins, so that the difficulties and inconvenience of struggling to find money to pay the fees will be eliminated? What will you do to make sure that we have this seamless process for prospective students? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. That's a tenable concern, and the Honorable Member can be assured that her suggestions are cherished. And in confirmation of my Honorable Minister, the Honorable Dr. Yause Educhum's commitment when he appeared before the committee, that he would engage with Student Loan Trust Fund to streamline some of these processes to ensure that the concern the Honorable Member has raised are adequately and timeously addressed. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. Yes, Nilante.
Honourable Chairman, permit me to ask my very good friend and brother just a question. My allegiance to Asin South and Asin itself was preventing me from asking him a question, but I want to. He's made a lot of comments, especially about abandoned projects and all those things. Chairman, you also made a comment on it. What I would say here is the fact that I believe sincerely, if we have projects that are not completed, why do we start new ones? That is a very difficult thing for me. People are talking about Bekwai and Salaga and places. Right here in Accra, in the capital, Ododo, we have 4 abandoned school projects. So that is a difficulty. But my question is, if I should ask you objectively to tell me one thing working with the free SHS and one thing not working with the free SHS, what will you say?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I take it that the Honorable Members declared interest in Asin South. And I must thank him that it was during his time as National Service, through his intervention, my village, Asin Krua, had the first pipe-borne water. And so that assertion must be appreciated. On abandoned projects, I would continue to assure that, consistent with President Akufo-Addo's commitment, every project began by various regimes at various stages of completion will be pursued to completion. And in response to free SHS is a very prudent and transformational policy, which all stakeholders are supporting, and rightly so, because of the gains that will yield for the whole country. My background as economic policy analyst, every policy that is planned and implemented in any part of the world has in itself, monitoring, evaluation, and reviews, formative reviews, such that the objectives will have to be kept on track, and parameters that are deviating are also kept in track. And all those cycle is playing out just in free SHS. So we'll continue monitoring, and any feedback that comes up that needs quick attention will be looked at and addressed. Thank you.
Rev, my good brother, my question really is to your, let me say, your own appraiser. what is one thing that is working well with the policy and one thing that is not working well with the policy, looking at it from your own policy point of view.
The key policy objectives had been access, quality, equity, and relevance. And all these indicators available are pointing creditably to the fact that access has been increased. And all these 4 pillars are aligned to the attainment of SDG 4, access to quality education for all. And in all these counts, quality education has not been compromised. And so access has been increased from 800,000 enrollment to 1.2 million. As we speak, cumulatively 1.6 million. Equity, there was a portion in the policy that made 30% allocation to elite schools for students or pupils from public schools. That has ensured that a child from a village like mine would be able to have access to a school like Abri Girls. And recently, there's a story, a very inspiring story of a young lady who swept 6 out of the 7 awards of Abri Girls. And this was someone who benefited from this 30% equity policy. In terms of relevance, all the indicators are out there in terms of quality. All the indicators are pointing to the fact that over 50% of our students who sat WASI are passing in all core subjects. And so, in brevity, the outcomes are speaking to the fact that the objectives are being achieved and that we must sustain it.
Thank you. Yes, and
I just want to continue. So there's nothing that is not working with the system. Because I agree, access, quality. What is one thing that you think is not working well?
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair. There's been a number of discussions going on, and my minister has engaged stakeholders. One of the issues that came up, which is very important, had to do with improved communication. For instance, the development levy component of the fees that were hitherto paid by parents, as have been absorbed by the government, have been paid and disbursed. But the stakeholders thought that because there was no narration specifically, relating to it, they thought that they needed extra levy, for which that was pointed out. So going forward, every such release that will go with the narration for them to know the actual allocation for development projects. So stakeholders will have that transparency. Again, a concern to do with prepaid meter system for SHS, which heads of schools have had cause to complain. The minister has promptly responded and taken steps to ensure that they are all done on postpaid and the bill ferried to the ministry for prompt payment, so that burden of initially pre-financing is removed. So some of these are, I would call it, feedback that is coming attention, and these are things that continuously will be monitored. Thank you.
Okay, Chairman, I will plead with my colleague to get the recent Joy News program that assessed the free SHS, so that he will be appraised a lot before he takes up full mantle of the office is being given. It will help him a lot with his system. My next question has to do, all of us are happy about the fact that many of our children who otherwise wouldn't have had secondary education now by the system will do. But what happens after free SHS? Have we thought about what happens after free SHS? Have we assessed the number of children who get stuck after free SHS? Have we looked at that one?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. It is in pursuit of this policy objective that His Excellency President Akufo-Addo has targeted that by 2030, the country should have gross tertiary enrollment ratio of 40% from the baseline of 18.8. Currently, 18.8 in sub-Saharan Africa would be one of the highest, but compared to best practices elsewhere, it's still one of the lowest. And so we are pursuing rigorously expansion policies to open university. For instance, as far advanced, MOU has been reached between Ghana Tertiary Education Commission and Ministry of Education on the one side and Open University UK to ensure that access is opened, and many other interventions geared towards absorbing those that are coming from pre-tertiary. But not only that, to align pre-tertiary transition to the relevance of the industry, contemporary times, cognizant of our fourth industrial revolution, to ensure that we are getting the right caliber and skills of students from pre-tertiary to be able to even align to the transformation of 65% science to humanity ratio to 60% science, technology, and engineering, and 40 humanities. And that is where STEM initiatives are being introduced, and that is where it's even going all the way down, pursuing it down to pre-tertiary levels to ensure we'll get the children transitioning with the right caliber of skills to feed a tertiary, and that challenge to be resolved.
Chairman, sorry, I'm just getting... no, I noticed... so, Chairman, mine is just... this 60-40, this is the second time you are repeating it in terms of access, science, and others. How do you intend to walk the talk?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. There are pathways that the Honorable Minister, Honorable Dr. Ose Edichum has initiated for implementation. At the moment, 10 STEM schools, SHS schools, which are specialized schools, at various stages of completion, and within the next 1 year will be operationalized. And these are going to open access for replication of, for instance, what we have at PreSec. But a lot more than that, we'll be focusing on robotics, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, mechatronics, and such other concepts that must be imbued in our students at the lower levels. This is what advanced countries, South Korea, Vietnam, Japan, Canada, USA, are doing to transform the economy. So we are going to start right. We're going to catch them young. We're going to develop pathways for them. For instance, the minister is considering even visual arts having a pathway towards engineering, such that when one completes SHS and has passed in visual arts, it will not only be limited to the traditional pathways available, but with some interventions, we'll be able to be drafted into pursuing architecture, for instance. And I know my good friend, the Honorable Member for Utu Senya, West is very much enthused with such pathways coming into force. So there's going to be a STEM academy, ensuring that we get our children to specialize, we get our children to be familiar. I, for one, studied nucleus, cells, biology, by just one-dimensional drawing and just seeing where the nucleus is, cells, and all these. If with the coming to being of STEM, you see in 3D, you see the real simulation, you see what you're studying, the reality of it in contemporary times, so that in the future we have a population that is relevant for the work skill set that are evolving.
All right, thank you. So Chairman, Honorable Nominee, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Starting with your CV, Doctor of Philosophy, PhD in Political Science, Foreign Policy Specialization, University of Ghana, Legon, 2016 to date. You've already answered questions in relation to that. Have you had any publication yet since you started? Have you done any publications?
Not yet. I'm still on the thesis and at the concluding stages. So when that is done, then publications will begin to arise out of that.
Well, I thought students are encouraged to do publications along the line. Anyway, but let's discuss the issue of enrollment in relation to free SHS. It seems to be the greatest achievement of free SHS when it is being discussed. But according to data from the UNESCO, enrollment has consistently increased in our secondary schools since 1971. And the latest figures, 2012, it was 56.44%. 2013, 67.76%. 2014, 64.06%. 2015, 67.91%. 2016, 68.90%. 2017, 69.01%. 18, 71.32%. 2019, 74.68%. Indeed, the world average in 2019, based on 57 countries, is set to be 79.52%. And these 57 countries are not countries that all provide free SHS. So my question is, since enrollment has consistently increased and as indicated by this data, what is the correlation between free SHS and the current increases that we are getting? What research has established that the consistent increase, in line with what has always been the case, is merely because of free SHS?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Just as I would need to have the figures and to validate in due course, not disputing or accepting, but I'm just considering, I'm just stating that I would need to validate those figures. But there's one trend that was observed from the Honorable Member's narration, and you could see a very steady rise in enrollment. And so that is a trend. For the past 5 years, enrollment is rising very fast. Something must be accounting for this. Now, considering the fact that...
No, it was always rising even before the last 5 years.
But the rate of rise?
No, it's
a factor.
56 to 67 to 67.91 to 68 to 69, 68 in 2016 and 69 in 2017, just those marginal increases, and then 71 in 2018 and 74 consistent. Nothing really dramatic.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I do not think we may have to debate on the trend. My analysis give me the indication that these are certainly not incremental changes, but the Honorable Member has an opinion which I respect. But the point here is access has been increased, and the figures are there. The enrollment as of 2016, 800,000, now 1.2, cumulatively as we speak, 1.6 million, partly because of expansion in infrastructure and the introduction of the double track system to ensure that the facility, same facility we have, enrolling 800,000 people, can be utilized optimally to serve 1.2 million students. And costs as a barrier, which I earlier raised, which many people from Zwarungu to Alubo to Bia relate with, that cost as a barrier was one of the major challenges, and that being removed, access was open.
Well, like you said, maybe we will have to do a research that will establish the correlation that exists between the current increases, which is not too different from increment before the introduction of free SHS, to establish how they are related. But I'll move on to my next question. Same-sex marriage is an issue you are very passionate about. You have made a couple of statements on the floor, I think recently, jointly with other colleagues on that subject. You have sought to organize even events to discourage the country from promoting the practice, and have even sought to legalize or legislate against an attempt to legalize same-sex marriage. You are going to the Ministry of Education. The ministry came under severe criticism when it attempted to introduce comprehensive sexuality education some time back. What will be your attitude, given that no clear policy direction as far as comprehensive sexuality education is concerned has come from the government of Ghana? We are yet to know if it is just shelved or just thrown out completely, never to be considered by the ministry or the government of Ghana. What will be your approach and your attitude towards the, if you like, shelved comprehensive sexuality education at the ministry?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. My faith is resolute on some of these stands, and in cognizance of the position of the Constitution and in line with the norms of our people, I am always proud to advocate what is in line with the people that identify with these 4 backgrounds that I've outlined in respect of LGBTQI matters. Specifically to the assertion by the Honorable Member, I'm very keen on these studies, and I've done a lot of extensive studies between the year 2001 and 2009, and also 2017 and to date. And I can tell the Committee on Authority that never have I come across any attempt by the Ministry of Education within these periods I have mentioned to introduce comprehensive sexuality education. If there is any other period outside this that the Honorable Member has evidence to that effect, I'll be glad to receive it, and then a response will be given. But like I said, from 2017 to date, from 2001 to 2009, I haven't come across any briefing anywhere, any policy document, anything for that matter, that is detailing any intent or proposition of the ministry to introduce comprehensive sexuality education. Thank you.
You haven't come across any such attempt?
I haven't.
Okay. I'm sure the nation knows what we discussed. Yes, what we discussed and where those materials came from. But I'll move on to my next issue. This is in relation to some interesting happenings in your constituency before the elections of 2020. We all have one way or the other come under attacks and criticism as far as our adherence to COVID protocols are concerned, especially around the election time. Even currently, Occupy Ghana just recently, I think yesterday, had to issue a statement to describe what happened at the late Sir John's funeral as reckless, being supervised by the president. I have also seen videos of what happened at the Accra Sports Stadium yesterday. So somehow we want the laws applied. But in your constituency, around the same month of July, your opponent was arrested by the police for organizing an event that was said to have gone against COVID protocols. The Central Regional Police Command arrested Mr. Joseph Kofi Damche, and I have the statement that was issued on 9th July 2020 and signed Irene Sewa-Opong, Deputy Superintendent of Police Public Affairs Unit. That was in July. And there's also a video online of you, that same July, in that same constituency, at events where people had gathered, and you were sharing what could best be described as campaign materials. Why does it appear to look like the law was applied differently to both of you engage in similar acts at the same time?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I have never appeared in any video where COVID-19 protocols were breached. And I know very well my good friend and respected colleague, Honorable Suheni, if there is any such available video, could be made available. Because this is a very important platform, and so it is important that something that I have not done is attributed to me, and I'm here, so I'm debunking. I have not breached at any point in time COVID-19 protocols. You have made references to specific breaches by some parties where you have evidence, you have adduced same. I haven't breached any, and I'm not in any video purported to have breached COVID-19 protocols. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll submit the video later. I didn't expect a denial, so I didn't bring it, but I'll submit the video later. Thank you. And maybe that's my last question, but just to also note that the honorable nominee may have to consider some publications. As I know, publications are one of the milestones in these, because this is a social science project, that he's engaged in, in relation to his doctorate of philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to state that the fact that publications have not been done, it's not an indication that no work has been done. There's extensive work in many spheres I could share, but none has been published yet, just to make that point clarified.
Very well. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Honorable. As of 2019, the Gender Parity Index for gross enrollment in tertiary education in Ghana stood at 0.8, meaning that fewer women had access to tertiary education more than men. What are you going to do, assisting your minister, to ensure that we get many more women enrolled in our tertiary institution? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gender parity, Honorable Chair, is one of the important indicators in the education strategic plan being pursued by the Honorable Dr. Yawase Edichum in line with the President's vision. And so that concern is tenable, and I will lend every relevant support to my minister in pursuit of same.
My last question will be posting of teachers to rural areas. There's been a lot of work done on why teachers refuse posting to rural areas. What policy direction are you going to assist your minister to put in place to ensure that teachers are motivated to accept posting to rural areas, because we know that people in the rural areas also need proper education? Thank you.
Honorable Chair, I must thank the Honorable Member for bringing this matter up. If not for the commitment and dedication of teachers who accepted posting to Asinkrua at a time when there was no access to electricity, no access to telecommunication, without access to ultra-modern education infrastructure, I would not be on this seat today. And so I support that any policy that will ensure that teachers are sent and receive posting to places where their services are needed the most, I would strongly support. The minister, when he appeared before the committee, made reference to the teacher posting rationalization policy, which is being pursued, and some reforms that have been implemented in that sphere, for which, as we speak, GES posts teachers directly from the headquarters to places where their services are needed most, not even decentralized to the district level. So when your appointment letter is given to you, they state on it the particular school location where you have to go. And I would support the pursuit of this policy to ensure that children living everywhere in Ghana receive that support. Thank you.
That will be all, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you very much.
Very well, Leader.
Chairman, thank you very much once again. And to our colleague, the Reverend, you see, if you have a reduction in the cutoff point, as observed by the Honorable Suhene, from 36% to 52%, don't you accept that that naturally will account for increased enrollment?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And these are all tenable reforms that will promote accessibility. And that is the pursuit of the country. The country, by consensus, wants no child left behind. So any tenable reform that will ensure that quality is not compromised and access is given is something that I strongly support.
Maybe to practicalize my question, what aggregate goes to free senior high school? You have an idea? Which aggregate is taken to enter free senior high school?
I know that with the exception of a fail in math and English, there's access.
It's
to free
wholesale.
SHS.
So the wholesale will give you increased enrollment because competition has suffered. And that is why we are saying that compromise probably have been compromised. Quality has been compromised. You see, if you get aggregate 18, 20, 22, in the age of competitiveness, there will be a cutoff. Now, you get 36, 48. So those children are likely, this is a real joke. The candidate will get 48 and go and tell the parent that he's done so well because he too has qualified for free senior high school. What do you have to say to that?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The question Honorable Leader has raised touches on a very important challenge that need to be addressed and that the Honorable Minister for Education has given indication of addressing. As we speak, there is no system even nationally standardized to assess the quality of education our children receive until the time they go to JHS3 and they write BEC. And then at that point, you know, they will have to get into SHS. Any intervention that was required even prior to entering into SHS would not have been given or identified if that was the terminal level. And so there's this national standardized test that the Honorable Minister is pursuing to ensure that from P2, P4, P6, there's a standardized test that is administered across all the schools in Ghana to assess the level of learning poverty, the level of literacy, numeracy, and where interventions are required. For instance, one is administered in P2 so that we have a broad level of competencies and skills of each student or people and their challenges. Interventions are given at P3 and
Chairman,
reassessed at P4.
The nominee, you know, Professor Alvin Adai-Mensah, a brilliant academic, and he wrote an article on the state of education and shared his opinion on the state of quality free senior high school and the challenges associated with it. You will be assisting the Minister for Education. I know that you've been very loyal to the new minister, no reference even to the previous minister who undertook many of the activities in the last 4 years. Everything you say, the new minister, who is just as old as you, 2-3 months, largely not the one who has anchored many of the things that have happened at that particular ministry. But come to look at it, now every aggregate qualifies you to go to senior high school. Mathematically, isn't that accounting for increased enrollment? Instead of you just attributing it to the sole factor of the fact that it's free.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I welcome the findings of the Venerable Professor Adai-Mensah, and I would relish to be able to take a comprehensive look at his findings and to take the needed steps and glean from his recommendations. And just to clarify, the Honorable Dr. Matthew Poku-Prempeh undoubtedly gave an indelible contribution to our education pursuit. The references that I have made so far, which had occasioned the mentioning of the new minister, is to do with the way forward, what is to be done now and going forward. But obviously, whatever has been done between 2017 and 2020 are to the credit of the leadership of the ministry, in this case, Honorable Dr. Matthew Poku-Prempeh, formidable education system established under his tenure.
Thank you. at least Chairman, he's come home now to appreciate that there was somebody working at that ministry. Chairman, my next question, I'd like to quote from Article 35(7) of the 1992 Constitution, which is a political sin we've all helped to commit. And it reads, Chairman, as far as practicable, a government shall continue and execute projects and programs commenced by the previous government. I speak in respect of what earlier colleagues have referred to. The Honorable Zuera attempted to look at it. Dormo in the Upper West region, specifically in the Wild West constituency. I physically, in driving to an adjoining village, had to stop by and take pictures of an uncompleted E-block. I heard you speaking to some of them. Many of the E-blocks across the country are not completed. And what Honorable Suhini sought to establish is the nexus between availability of adequate infrastructure and expansion in numbers. I have no fear of contradiction that this double track of red, gold, green is a function of the lack of absence of critical infrastructure. You want to give us an assurance that in assisting the minister, you will respect the letter and spirit of Article 35(7) of the 1992 Constitution. Honorable nominee. Thank you, Chair.
Very much so, Honorable Chair.
Chairman, I do not know which I've seen some deputy ministers share with us what their portfolio emphasis will be. Since I do not know whether you will be for basic education or tertiary education or responsible for operations, there are questions about the quality of accredited tertiary institutions in Ghana. You just wake up, there's what you call mushrooming of private universities in Ghana that has no respect for quality standards, yet it has approval of the Ministry of Education working through its regulatory institutions. Assure this committee that quality standards will not be compromised for purposes of higher education in the country using those institutions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. As the Honorable Leader has acknowledged, I'm yet to be approved, and so I'm yet to know my schedule. But in response to this important concern, if considering some of the key policy intentions of the Public University Act is all intention towards addressing some of these matters, and therefore I would support the re-engagement of stakeholders to ensure that the Public University Bill comes back to the table to ensure standards at the tertiary level are not compromised. Thank you.
And Chairman, may I refer the nominee to Article 25(1) of the 1992 Constitution, which states, and I quote, all persons shall have the right to equal educational opportunities and facilities, and with a view to achieving the full realization, and Chairman, this is my emphasis, that right, basic education shall be free.
Honorable Chair, I'll be glad to go along with the Honorable Leader.
Honorable Reverend, I'll go slowly. 25(1)(a) is my emphasis. And this is my notion. You may be hearing it for the first time. It's my notion of the word progressive. When the Constitution says in 25(1), basic education shall be free, compulsory, and available to all. So that level of education, I'm not too sure whether Ghana has achieved 100% free, compulsory, universal basic education. So you haven't gotten it right yet at that foundation level, and you are already, my word, don't be offended, hastily implementing a free senior high school when you have not achieved compulsory basic education. What do you have to say to that?
Thank you very much. In pursuit of the constitutional mandate, as the Honorable Leader has made reference to Article 25(1) and the subsequent sessions, and also aligned to the attainment of SDG 4, access to quality education for all, these interventions are necessary, particular free SHS. There is considerable gains made at the basic level, and for which attention ought to be received also at the secondary level. If the concern for universal free universal basic education is tenable, which I strongly associate with, then it is equally tenable to look at the cycle sustained upwards. And so that...
Chairman, so like I have said, my observation may be a national conversation on it. My notion of progressive would have been for the country to attain free compulsory universal basic education, then leap forward. But whilst we are still found wanting with schools under trace, lack of teaching and learning materials at the basic level, literacy and numeracy, not adequate training for the foundation level of students, we are at the epoch level of a free senior high school. Probably for your reading again, Professor Jangma, who used to work with the IE, also has some shared strong views on this particular matter. I know that you are interested in foreign policy, and on the floor of Parliament, I've been reading some of your answers. UN resolution on the two-state resolution to Palestine, Israel. Where do you stand on it?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I stand on the resolution passed at the UN. Thank you.
You share the view of a two-state resolution to the crisis?
I share the view as passed at the UN, which Ghana has subscribed to. Thank you.
Will you be surprised if I quote your words when President Trump declared a certain position? What position you preferred on the floor of Parliament?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I believe strongly that the Honorable Leader very much acknowledges the many nuances and complexities embedded in this matter, the sensitivities therein, and this platform certainly will not be exhaustive
So because
to
of
address
the
them. Thank you.
I'll move away and keep you to respect resolutions of the UN at all times. I was perusing it, but out of respect for you, I don't need to paraphrase what you said on the floor of Parliament. But I'm happy.
Thank you, Honorable.
You gladly remember.
Thank you.
You gladly remember when you made those comments. So, Chairman, this nominee is to help the Honorable Minister for Education. And have you complied with your tax obligations?
Very much so, Honorable Chair.
Have you declared your assets in accordance with the Constitution?
In the process of doing so.
Even in this new Parliament of 2021?
Honorable Chair, please come again on that.
Even for the 8th Parliament?
In the process.
Chairman, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Honorable Reverend Ntim Fordjour, we thank you for attending upon the House to answer questions. I have no more questions for you. You are discharged for now.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, for your kindness.
Kuduka,
swear by Almighty God
swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give before this committee
that the evidence I shall give before this committee
touching the matter in issue shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Honorable George Miriku Duka. This is your second term in Parliament, right?
Rightly so, Mr. Chairman.